good for you. Come on. We'll think of another place. Come with me. Let's have a smoke break. Nah, not just a normal break. It's smoke break. Smoke break. Smoke break.
30 seconds and counting.
There were plenty of years where there were guys who would dread being drafted by the Buffalo Bills. Not anymore.
Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds.
Brandon Beane realizes they're in a window of 2 to 3 years max to get this done while the iron's still hot. And getting Von Miller into that situation was big for the Bills.
10, 9.
Oh, baby.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Great interview, guys.
Oh, baby. What's up? Z-Bot here with you. Live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. On a Sunday night, 1 week away from the big game, the Super Bowl. 1 week from tonight. But we got our football fill this past weekend, I suppose, didn't we? With the Pro Bowl games. So that'll tide us over for a bit. But welcome in. It is the Smoke Break live on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. And as always, we are powered by BetUS, where the game begins. Receive a 125% sign-up bonus in the link in the description below. A quick one tonight, folks. Didn't want to wait until the smoke break tomorrow to dive into what we heard from Stefon Diggs over the weekend. You could say he broke his silence, so to speak. I don't really know if there was silence to be broken, but we had not heard from Stefon Diggs since the Bills season ended with their loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. And as we know, for whatever reason, whether it's his fault, our fault, the media's fault, Stefon Diggs is always a big topic of conversation when it comes to the offseason. It seems like it is now tradition. The Bills season ends, and then we go from discussing Bills football to discussing the future of Stefon Diggs with these Buffalo Bills. I don't know why that's the case, but it's the case nonetheless. And this past weekend, it's become a hot-button topic once again. Stefon Diggs' future with the Buffalo Bills. Now, Stefon Diggs was interviewed over the weekend. He's at the Pro Bowl games, and he was interviewed by Cameron Wolfe of NFL Network. A real quick interview. We're going to watch it together here. We're going to break it down step by step. I'm going to give you my thoughts on each piece of it, because I think that this interview can be interpreted in a variety of different ways, and unfortunately, that's the biggest problem. Now, whether Stefon Diggs does this by design or not, it's up to another thing you can debate. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I have no idea. The thing of it is that it feels like every time Diggs is asked questions or he's given an opportunity to speak on certain situations, he leaves everything up for interpretation. Therefore, interpretation is being had by the media, by the variety of football radio and talk shows and television shows. And it becomes this topic where, hey, it's up to you to decide what his words mean. And you can decide whether those are negative towards his future with the Buffalo Bills or how you view him or whatever else. And I've been on record a million times during the ridiculous drama, quote unquote, that we had to experience with Stefon Diggs this past offseason. I thought it was completely blown out of proportion. I thought it was total BS. And I thought it was a manufactured headline for well over a month or two. It felt like it seemingly felt like it would not go away in the latter half of the offseason. And then what do you know? As soon as the season started, you never heard about it again. It's pretty hilarious, honestly, the ridiculousness of the entirety of the situation. Because what I just said, the offseason, that's all anybody talked about when it came to these Bills. The season started, and especially in the beginning of the season, Stefon Diggs was on an absolute tear. Go back and look at his numbers from like week 1 to week 10. He was crushing it. Multiple 100-yard games in a row. It wasn't even that he was putting out a really high production level on the field that led to this story going away. It just went away because the season started. There was nothing to talk about in the offseason, so hey, let's talk about Stefon Diggs' future with the Bills because we have to fill a show. We got to fill a couple hours of airtime here, so let's just say, hey, Stefon Diggs, trouble in paradise? That's what it all felt like. Season starts, you don't hear a word about it, but then things get a little bit interesting. The people waiting in the weeds to come back out and pounce on this story start to get a little bit of ammunition, perhaps, where we watch the season go on, and Stefon Diggs doesn't seem to be the cornerstone of this offense like we've known him to be since the Bills traded for him. He was no longer this big, deep threat that they were continuously going to. It all of a sudden felt like Diggs went from the deep route guy, the game-breaking guy, to the guy that was lining up for bubble screens that almost never worked. His game became an intermediate style game where Allen was finding him on slants and curls and way too often on screens. It was no longer this deep attack that we've become accustomed to seeing Stefon Diggs thrive with it. But this offense entirely, this past season, their identity was completely different than what we've become accustomed to. And to be honest, it's the reason why they ended up having as much success as they did, in my opinion. And it's the reason why they were able to string together 6 consecutive wins and pull off one of the more improbable accomplishments that this team's ever accomplished. Staring 6-6 in the face. We're on the verge of just being completely eliminated from the playoffs, much less winning the AFC East with a 3-game deficit with 5 games to go and snagging a top 2 seed where they had a 0.1 chance to do so. This team under Joe Brady, they completely flipped how they were playing. They heavily increased the run game. They allowed Josh Allen finally to use his legs. It was no longer an air raid style offense where they were going to stick to that and that alone. They ran the ball a ton under Joe Brady. They were running it actually more than they were throwing it based on the snap count. And it was working. James Cook had an off-the-charts year. Towards the latter half of the year, go back and look at Josh Allen's rushing stats. They were incredible. It was a primary focus of their game. And they were also getting other guys involved. As the season went on, Dalton Kincaid was becoming more of a prominent role within this team. Khalil Shakir came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he was looking like maybe the best option. Gabe Davis, in and out of the injury report, somebody had to step up. And this offense, they go into every game with the opposing side knowing that Diggs is the guy. It's very hard to continuously have 100-yard game after 100-yard game when you're going against some of the best corners in the league, and they know, hey, outside of Diggs, we got a rookie tight end, we got a second-year running back, we got a young wide receiver in Khalil Shakir that no one knows what the value of him is going to be until we all of a sudden figured out, hey, this guy's way better than we thought he would be. That was what the Bills' offense was. Pretty easy for the defensive side of things on the other side to say, hey, Stefon Diggs, circle him. We know what we're going to do. But that's been the case since he's come to the Bills, and he's still had, a ton of success. And really, when you look at it this year, was it a mind-blowing year for Diggs? No, but it was still another 1,000-yard year. And I understand these days, those are pretty customary for top wide receivers in the league, but it wasn't like it was a terrible year. But as the year went on, what you noticed, it wasn't that Stefon Diggs wasn't doing anything or that he wasn't still a great receiver. It just seemed as though it wasn't a point of emphasis to use him the way we as fans have been accustomed to seeing him used. So here we are. which sucks. And this is the period we're in. I mean, this is what sucks the most about the season ending. You literally go from one day you're playing for a chance to go to the AFC Championship to an hour removed from the loss. You turn on the radio and we're already talking about everything that you could think of under the sun that has nothing to do with the game. We're talking about firing Sean McDermott. We're talking about the NFL draft. We're talking about Stefon Diggs. We're talking about the future of Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. All of this within the span of an hour after the game ends. This is why the offseason sucks so much sometimes, in my opinion, especially the early stages of it. As we go on, right? As we go on and the Super Bowl's over and we get into March, then it starts to get fun again. You start doing the draft speculation because it's right around the corner. You're getting excited for that. You're getting excited to see all of the different trades that'll be made. You'll be excited to see all the different players going to different locations. It gets exciting. This part of the offseason I hate. Because it's really not the offseason. Obviously, we got the Super Bowl 1 week from tonight, but it's the offseason for 30 other teams. And it's a lot of BS a lot of the time. The only nice part about this is the coaching hires. It's the only thing that's really worth a damn, in my opinion, as far as looking into, talking about, having some validity. It's stuff like this here that I hate because there's nothing else to talk about. What else am I going to talk about with the Bills other than their inability to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, and then a variety of other stuff that I got to go and search for and say, hey, let's talk about this, even though there might not be a whole lot to talk about. But with that said, the reason I'm talking about it tonight is because this is the first time that Diggs has spoken on a variety of topics in regard to this past season and in regard to his future. And that has been all over the internet all weekend long. And people, as they did last offseason, have very staunch opinions one way or the other. So I figured tonight we're going to sit here. The interview is only 3 minutes long. We're going to sit. We're going to watch the interview, and we're going to go through each question, and we're just going to talk about what I feel Stefon Diggs is saying in each one of these, or what he's not saying. Because if you've watched the interview already, you kind of understand Stefon Diggs says a whole lot without saying a whole lot. So once again, it leaves it up to interpretation. Let's dive in together here and interpret it ourselves. We will see what we take away from it. And by the way, in the chat, you let me know as well how you feel about what is being said and what you feel like he means, and really what you take away from the whole thing and how you see things panning out with the Buffalo Bills and Stefon Diggs. So let's dive into it. Once again, the interview was this past weekend during the Pro Bowl games with NFL Networks Cameron Wolfe. So we're going to take it piece by piece here. We'll start from the beginning. We'll pause. We'll talk about each individual element here, kind of break down what it could be that he's saying, what can be interpreted from it, if anything at all. But hey, folks, welcome to the offseason. Let's kick it off. Don't you love that? You do a whole segue in. Hey, here's the segue. Let's watch the interview. Loop, 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 load. You know, incredible. Here we go.
Another Pro Bowl for a year.
Now we kick it off. Let's watch.
Steph, congrats on another Pro Bowl for a year. How do you maybe corral the celebration of what you got with how the season ended for you guys?
I mean, we had a couple weeks to decompress, especially considering how the season ended. I had a conversation with a couple of my close friends and, my peers. And, of course, the season ended how we wanted. Of course, some plays that I want back. Of course, I know it's plays we all want back, but more so interpersonally that, so more out there. You know what I'm saying? We can say it every year. Hopefully, hopefully wishing, getting as far as we can. We got a lot of talent. But, as the season ended, of course, it's just some shit you want back, and you want to go as far as you can. And it's just not a one person sport. Of course, you want everything and you want the glory, all that type of good stuff. But, that day we came up a little short.
You say
So that part, that's just a cliche question and answer. Talk to me about coming up short. Well, what do you want them to say? Obviously, they wanted to win the game. They wanted to go on and win the Super Bowl. It didn't happen. So, therefore, you look back at all the things you didn't do right, the plays you'd want to have back. But he does mention we in there a lot. We have the talent. We have this. We want to accomplish this. The way I looked at that part is that he's talking about, we didn't do it this year, but, that's the goal moving forward. We have the pieces to do it eventually. But that question in itself isn't really, there's not much I could take away from that. That just is what it is.
There's obviously stuff you want back.
Yeah.
The year seemed a little odd for you. You know, you weren't
Exactly.
getting a lot of touches at some part of the season, and then obviously the last game a little rough. You know, it had maybe a drop. I don't know if you count that as a
that's
drop.
what I said. That's one of the plays I actually want back. I count all the plays. If I touch it, I drop it. You know what I'm saying? If I get one hand or the finger on it, I still count it. That's why I like, you know, mainly I'm always accountable first. You know what I'm saying? As a player, y'all know me for a long time. Of course, like, and even just the season, it's in its total, like, the balance of it, you know what I'm saying, rolling with the punches, you know, the first 8 games and the last 8 games or 9 games or 10 games, however you dice it, it was a different picture. You know what I'm saying? It's something I had to get adjusted to, you know, as a teammate, just rolling with the punches, being the best teammate you could be, best player you could be, and keep growing from it. So
I know, obviously.
All right, so first of all, Cameron Wolfe, I don't know if you count that as a drop. Obviously, the deep ball late in the game, Allen throws an absolute dime. Felt like it had 70 air yards underneath of it. He's like, I don't know if you count that as a drop. Well, I don't know. If that's not a drop, I don't know what is. And obviously that's the play he's referring to. That's the big play. These are the problems with plays like that in games like that. Is that in games like that, where that's the last game of the season and that's really the last moment we have to remember you of, you're just going to remember Stefon Diggs. The last thing you think of is, oh, the big drop in the game. If he caught it, the game could have went differently. Do I think the game might have been a bit different if he catches that ball? I do. Do we know that for certain? No, they still got down there. They still got down right in the red zone territory and were still able to not tie the game or take the lead. But that is the last moment of Stefon Diggs within the last season here that you remember. You don't remember anything else because it's the last thing you saw. And unfortunately, it was a bad thing you saw that could have led to a lesser chance to win that ball game. But the key there to me is it was almost like you see in the tweet here from Cameron Wolfe, his decrease in usage. Now, people are getting after Cam Wolfe for saying a decrease in usage. I don't get after him because I know what he's trying to say. Maybe it's just not being said to adequately describe what I think he's getting at, right? He's saying a decrease in usage. They didn't try to decrease his usage. You go back and look at the numbers, and over the last 10 games, I believe, Khalil Shakir had more yards than Stefon Diggs with half the targets. I think Khalil Shakir had 38 targets over that time span. Stefon Diggs had 80. And Khalil Shakir finished with more yards. So I think to a lot of people, they go and look at the numbers from Diggs at the end of the year. And rightfully so, if you just look at the box score, you say, well, you know, they're not doing anything with Diggs. Diggs isn't doing anything, and they're not getting them involved. Well, they were definitely trying to get him involved. He had double the targets that Khalil Shakir had, with Khalil Shakir having more yards. So it wasn't like they completely wrote Stefon Diggs out of the playbook. If anything, it was the opposite. It's just that other guys started to become prominent in their roles. And I, for one, had felt like Stefon Diggs seemed fine with it. I saw Stefon Diggs on the sideline numerous times throughout the year, including the playoff games, where he's talking with Josh Allen. Looks like he's fired up. Looks like he's giving guys pep talks, motivation. It never seemed like there was an issue there. Most of these guys, they want to be contributors, of course, and wide receiver no more than them. I mean, it always feels like the wide receiver position is the position that you hear the most about. I need the ball. I want the ball. I want to be a contributor, whatever. We didn't hear a whole lot, if anything, about Stefon Diggs' lack of contribution, I guess maybe the best way to put it, to a lot of these games. It wasn't even like he wasn't contributing either. There were multiple plays throughout that win streak there where he would have a great play or two or three that would result in a first down or just moving the ball down the field in a crucial situation. I think because there was such a lack of big play from Stefon Diggs that a lot of people were just like, he wasn't doing anything. He wasn't doing a whole lot compared to what he was doing in the beginning of the season or what we're accustomed to, but it wasn't like he wasn't a part of the offense. It's just that under Joe Brady, it felt like the offense was spread out so much more. The ball was going to Khalil Shakir. The ball was going to Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. And when Gabe Davis was in there, we all know there would be games where he would have no targets. And all of a sudden he'd have a game where he had well over 100 yards and he was a major impact. We all know James Cook was touching the ball a ton the entire running back room was touching the ball a ton. And we know that Josh Allen, of course, was running the ball much more towards the end of the year. So it was a distribution amongst the entire offense, more so than it was in the beginning of the year. At least that's how I saw it. And I feel like that really contributed to their success later on in the year, and it really helped propel them to get to where they were when it came to going into the playoffs. So I didn't ever find that to be a major issue as far as how I thought Stefon Diggs viewed it. But you would hope you would be getting more out of Diggs, the amount that they were targeting him. It's tough to decipher which way is the right way to look at it. Because the way I see it, there was contribution from all over that offense, and they were still averaging just south of 30 points a game. So even though Diggs wasn't lighting up the stat sheet, it wasn't like their offensive production it went into the gutter. They were still averaging just south of 30 yards per game, or 30 points per game. He wasn't as prominent in the offense as he was in the beginning, and it did feel at times you're like, where is Stefon Diggs? But I think that might have just been a casualty of everybody else on this offense getting more involved than we're accustomed to in watching this team. It felt like Stefon Diggs was always the focal point. I don't necessarily think he wasn't a focal point. Like I just said, you look at the numbers, he still had 80 targets over that time span, but what was being done with those 80 targets? That, to me, is the bigger question at hand. Now, that is probably a collective fault. Was he being adequately used on those targets? I think a lot of those targets were not adequately used. Stefon Diggs is not the guy I'm drawing up a bubble screen for, yet it felt like he had at least 10 designed screenplays for him in the latter half of the year, and none of them ever made sense to me. I don't think any of them ever worked. So maybe it's little things like that. And as you just heard him say, it was an adjustment for him trying to figure out this new type of role, because it was a new role. But it felt like that whole offense underwent a new role in order to be able to propel themselves to get to where they have to get or had to get. And as we know, there's no better team sport than football. And sometimes your star guys have to operate in a way that maybe is not the most advantageous for them. Gabe Davis is another perfect example. We all remember that game when Joe Brady gave Gabe Davis a game ball when he didn't even have a target. So we don't know exactly what the entire scope of this offense revolved around when it came to getting certain guys involved. Some games just went the way they went. We talk about the Cowboys game all the time. They didn't go into that game saying, hey, James Cook, you're touching the ball 40 times today, and we're getting you to 200 all-purpose yards, right? That's not what the game plan was going into it, but it's how the game evolved. So some games, in that game in particular, Diggs, you're not going to be really involved in this game. Gabe Davis, you're not going to be involved in this game. Hell, nobody's going to be involved in this game. Josh Allen's not even going to be involved in this game. Josh Allen had 7 completions in that game, but they won the game by 21 points. So sometimes it's just what you have to do to win. And the sacrifice for a win is at times individual stats, individual accolades. So it's not always what's happening in the box score. What's going on the field that you're contributing to a team win? And I think that example of Joe Brady giving Gabe Davis the game ball speaks volumes, because he's telling us he's doing the things you don't see. He's doing the things that don't show up on the stat sheet, and it results in a win. But I think what you get from Diggs there is he is understanding of the role that he was within that latter half of the season. Now, we saw this happening with A.J. Brown in Philly. He was very, very vocal about it. Stefon Diggs was not doing that, and I want to make that clear. The Philadelphia Eagles, where do they start off? 9-1, 10-1, and they wound up finishing the year as maybe one of the worst teams in the NFL. That's not an exaggeration. The Philadelphia Eagles went from looking like one of the best teams in the league. You're fresh off of an NFC title victory and, of course, a Super Bowl appearance. You come into this year and you're red hot, either 9-1, 10-1, I forget, and you fall off a cliff unlike I think we've ever seen before. That might have been one of the worst collapses from a team of that caliber that I have ever seen. And A.J. Brown was awfully vocal about his lack of contribution to the team, his lack of involvement, his lack of getting the ball. And I always found it interesting during that time. We were hearing about it. It was a talking point that you would hear about whether you flip the TV or the radio on or whatever. But it wasn't like there was an overwhelming amount of scrutiny. It felt like if that was Stefon Diggs, all you would hear would be, oh, here we go. Diggs again, bitching up a storm. That's not what it was. So just an interesting point there, depending on how you view the whole Diggs situation. The one thing that annoys me about it, he doesn't get credit for the things that he doesn't do, but he gets slammed for the things that he'll seldomly do at times. Right? So that's a thing that I don't think gets factored in. A.J. Brown talking about his lack of involvement, this, that. I don't think it really got held against him. Stefon Diggs, no one had a lack of contribution more as a star player. Who had less production in the second half of the season than Diggs? And you really did not hear a peep out of him. I think that that's commendable, whether, you factor that in or not. Let's see what else goes on here in the interview.
A lot of people outside of the building want to speculate on you and Josh's relationship. What does that mean? How would you describe?
All right, before we get into this part, I want to focus in a little bit more. This part was interesting to me. The way he answers this question, this was interesting to me. We'll talk. We'll let it roll and we'll talk about it. But pay close attention to this segment in particular.
Speculate on you and Josh's relationship. What does that mean? How would you describe where you guys are and moving forward, given what you just discussed?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that multiple times. You know what I'm saying? I kind of like, at this point where I am, I kind of let everybody feel how they feel. You know what I'm saying? If you got your opinion, it's not an opinion-based business. It's a money-based business and a number-based business. So for me, I try to leave the personal out of it. You know what I'm saying? My personal relationship is my personal relationship. It's for the people outside of a relationship to kind of speculate or kind of like draw conclusions or kind of figure it out as they go. But people that's involved in between the two people or anybody else involved are the people that know. So for me, I get tired of the same story over and over. Absolutely. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? For everybody else, it's a new offseason for you to play around with.
This is where he's losing me a bit. Right there. He's asked by Cameron Wolfe about his relationship with Josh Allen. Look, I understand. Diggs has probably been asked this question 1,000 times, and he's sick of it. And clearly he indicates there that he's sick of it. He's not asked about the financials of any situation. He's not asked about the money he's owed or what he wants or what he's going to get. He's asked about his relationship with Josh Allen, and he doesn't even speculate, or he doesn't even mention Josh Allen. He doesn't mention how he feels about Josh Allen, his personal relationship. He says, I'm going to let people have their opinion one way or the other on how they feel about it. It's not an opinion-based situation now. If Diggs just says, I understand what he's saying, by the way. Let me just say this, because there's people out there, no matter what he says, that are going to be like, oh, he's lying. He can't stand Diggs or whatever, or he can't stand Allen or whatever. But if he said what he said and then followed it up, but let me just give you an example. If he goes, look it, there's plenty of people that think we have a terrible relationship because they saw me on the sidelines getting animated in the playoff loss. And he goes, hey, people are going to have their opinion. But once again, I want to make it clear. Josh Allen's my guy. I love Josh Allen. Nobody I'd rather go to war with every week than that guy. Nobody I'd rather have throwing me the ball. Then, hey, in that moment, if you still have the opinion that they don't have a great relationship, then you're kind of standing on a whole lot of nothing. You're essentially creating your own narrative out of thin air because, hey, I saw Stefon Diggs in the Bengals loss have his hands up on the sidelines. God forbid a professional athlete shows a little emotion when they're getting their ass kicked in the playoffs. Right? So if that's your only reason as to why you think Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen's relationship isn't great, well, hey, that's on you. But now I'm sorry, this opens the door for those people. Let's watch this back one more time. Stefon Diggs is asked about his relationship with Josh Allen, and he essentially says it doesn't matter what my relationship is with Josh Allen. I think it matters. Do you think Travis Kelce and Mahomes would be as good as they are if they don't have the relationship that they have? Those two are like best buds. Gronk and Tom Brady were best buds. I'm not saying you got to be best buds. I'm not saying the guy's got to be the best man in your wedding. But chemistry is a real thing. And I think anybody would tell you the more of a bond you have in the locker room, the better of a team you're going to be. I'm not questioning that Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen's relationship isn't great, but people out there are. And maybe this is why. He did not mention the relationship at all. Let's play it back here again, and let's start to understand that I think a lot of this at times can be overblown and it's BS, but there's part of it that Stefon Diggs himself is allowing the door to be open for, and I think this is a part of it. Let's run it back a bit.
For me, I get tired of the same story. You get best player, just being the best teammate you could be, best player you could be, and keep growing from it. So
I know obviously a lot of people outside of the building want to speculate on you and Josh's relationship. What does that mean? How would you describe where you guys are and moving forward, given what you just discussed?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of touched on that multiple times. You know what I'm saying? I kind of like, at this point where I am, I kind of let everybody feel how they feel. You know what I'm saying? If you got your opinion, it's not an opinion-based business. It's a money-based business and a number-based business. So for me,
it's not an opinion-based business. It's a money-based business. I mean, I don't know what that has anything to do with the question for starters here. He's asked about him and Josh Allen's relationship. He's like, I'm just going to let everybody think what they think. It's not an opinion-based business. It's a money-based business. I don't know what that has to do with anything that he was just asked.
Try to leave the personal out of it. You know what I'm saying?
I try to leave the personal out of it. I don't know how it's personal if you're asked, hey, you two are considered to be one of the best players at your position and you play together and you are his top target. You have been a better receiver since you became the wide receiver with him. You've been on covers of magazines. It seems like you guys got your handshake and stuff. It seems like you have something there, but people are saying otherwise for whatever reason. And you're saying it's a money-based business and I leave the personal out of it. If you're looking at that from face value, I leave the personal out of it. The way I kind of see that, like he's just like, it doesn't matter how I feel about Josh Allen. And if he's saying that, if he's saying, I leave the personal out of it, then I think you get to the point where you understand where people are saying he doesn't really feel great about the situation. Like if somebody asks you, so let's say, say you and your wife own a business and you're being interviewed about the business. And I by the way, I understand this is a completely different situation, but just run with me here for a second. You and your wife own a business and a local news station's coming and interviewing you about the business. And you're talking about the business and, the interviewer asks you, hey, how is you and your wife's relationship when it comes to the business, the day to day? And you just say, oh, we leave the personal out of it. We leave the personal out of the business. Well, you guys are running the business together. You seemingly have to have a great relationship in order for it to work. We've seen elements of it that make it seem like you have a great relationship. I remember the cover of Sports Illustrated. We see him interact on the sidelines. We've seen him before say that they have a great relationship. But if my answer to that is, oh, we leave the personal out of it, wouldn't your initial reaction be, oh, that's kind of odd? You guys run this business together. You do everything together. The success of the business relies on you, and you just don't care about the personal element of it. That has more negative connotation than it does positive, especially when you link that to, hey, this is a money-based business. I'm just going to let everybody think what they think. I understand that People are going to have their opinions, but you can make it known that opinions fall on the face of facts. You are the only one that knows the relationship. You can state a fact, and anybody else with their opinion on the relationship can have said opinions. But if they're saying those guys don't have a great relationship, well, it's not based on facts. And an opinion not based on facts is just a whole lot of hearsay.
My personal relationship and my personal relationship. It's for the people outside of a relationship to kind of speculate or kind of like draw conclusions or kind of.
This is another interesting part here. Listen to this part closely.
People outside of a relationship to kind of speculate or kind of like it's a money-based business and a number-based business. So for me, I try to leave the personal out of it. So my personal relationship and my personal relationship. It's for the people outside of a relationship to kind of speculate or kind of like draw conclusions or kind of figure it out as they go.
Why? My personal relationship is my personal relationship with him. It's up to the people on the outside to determine how they feel about it. It doesn't have to be. The way he's answering this question, it's almost like he's inviting that. No one looks at the relationship. How many quarterback wide receiver tandems in this league do we sit around and talk about their relationship? Do we sit around and talk about Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp's relationship? Do we sit around and talk about, you name it. Does it matter? Do we sit around and talk about Jared Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown's relationship? No, because there's really no reason to talk about it. Why would we care? There's never been an indication to talk about it. And if Diggs here just says, well, he's my guy, he's my quarterback, I'm going to go as far as he's going to go, and I love being able to contribute to our success with him. But when you say it's up to everyone else to decide, you're inviting people to decide their thoughts on you. Therefore, there are going to be speculative thoughts. There's a lot of this that I feel like was BS throughout the offseason, and this is got nothing to do with Josh Allen. What I thought was BS is when Diggs didn't show up for the first day of OTAs, and everybody was like, oh, pack it in, he's gone, only for him to show up the next day, it never be mentioned again, and it never seemed to be a problem again. Kind of looked a little foolish that everybody took one missed day of OTAs and said, oh, this guy wants out, when he came back the next day, and you never heard about it again. You never had a reason to think about it again because there was no other issues to pop up again. This just kind of, in my opinion, seems to add a little bit of kerosene to a fire that Stefon Diggs seems to be awfully annoyed by. It seems like Stefon Diggs does not like the fact that it's constantly speculated, right? Him and Allen's relationship, his future with the Bills. And I don't think I like that either, especially if I had a staunch feeling on how I felt about either side. If I was staunch in my beliefs about my relationship with Josh Allen, if I was staunch in my beliefs about my relationship with this organization, I would be offended by those going on the opposite end of that and saying otherwise. But when you don't take a stand and you kind of just split the middle here and say, hey, it's up to you to think what you want to think, well, then most people are going to think negatively. If you're not taking a stand on how you feel about your quarterback, especially in a positive way, well, then most people are going to sit there and they're going to say, hey, what is this? Bill, I am saying you don't have to be friends of anybody in order to do your work. Oh, I totally agree with that. This is a whole different type of business, though. No one's walking into your 9 to 5 at your cubicle asking you about, hey, what's your relationship with you're into the accounting firm. Hey, what's your relationship with the guy in the shipping department? No one's doing that, right? This is completely different. And I'm not saying, believe me, don't get it twisted. I'm not saying these two got to be going out to dinner every weekend. I don't care about that at all. I don't. It's well known that Tom Brady and Bill Belichick never spent a minute together outside of the facility. So it doesn't matter. But at the same time, when you are being asked about it direct. Like if Tom Brady was asked about his relationship with Bill Belichick, he's never going to say, oh, that's what everybody else to talk about. He's going to say, I love Bill Belichick. I love my coach. We're doing this and that. What I'm getting at here is that he doesn't have to love him. Maybe he doesn't love him, and maybe the feeling's mutual. Who knows? But why open it? Why essentially just say, hey, let everybody sit around and talk about what they feel about us, when you can kind of put it to bed yourself, and then anybody who wants to have a differentiating opinion, well, that's on them, with a whole lot of baseless claims to back themselves up.
But people that's involved in between the two people or anybody else involved are the people that know. So for me, I get tired of the same story over and over. Absolutely. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? For everybody else, it's a new offseason for you to play around with.
So this is what confuses me. He gets tired of it. He says he gets tired of it. If he's tired of it, I would just say, look, this is the last I'm going to talk about this. Me and Alan have a great relationship. Like all the things I just mentioned, we got a great relationship. He's my guy. We're out on the field battling every week. We're only going to go as far as each other pushes each other, whatever, right? If we say that and then just say, I'm getting tired of it, everybody can think what they want, but we have a great relationship. If you think otherwise, that's on you. Go ahead and run with your claim. So to me, you can't be sick of it while also inviting more opportunity to add to the questions and the claims that you are telling us you're getting sick of. Does that make sense? You're inviting more opportunity for the thing you're getting sick of to be discussed and talked about. And I just think that when you're asked about your relationship with Josh Allen, to not even mention him really, and to not even say anything positive about the guy at all, I don't know. I understand. He could have honestly said everything he just said there, but if he ended it with, and Josh is the man. Josh just came off a 50 touchdown season. He's balling. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like, this was an opportunity for him to shine some light on his guy. And you see how it is throughout the league. All these guys do is, and this is with every sport. Like the other night with Jalen Brunson with the Knicks, he was asked about, him being in the MVP conversation, making his first All-Star game. The Knicks were on a 9-game win streak. He was asked about it. He was getting really emotional about it, but he didn't want to talk about himself. And then the reporter's like, well, let's talk about your teammates, because I know you want to talk about that. We know that all of these guys, all they ever do is they give the credit to their teammates nonstop, all of this. And I just found it interesting here that there was nothing said about Allen at all. So the weird thing about this whole situation right here to me, the one weird thing about this to me was that he's obviously sick and tired of talking about this, but at the same time, he's kind of opening up saying like, hey, you got a whole other offseason to play with it.
Talk about all season, last one for me. There's always going to be talk about.
Here comes the big thing that everybody's talking about here. Here comes the big part everybody's been talking about all weekend long.
For you to play around with.
Talk about all season, last one for me. There's always going to be talk about what is next.
Yeah.
Obviously, contract becomes a thing, and you guys' cap situation. Where do you think you'll be? Do you think you'll be a Bill next season?
I don't know. I feel like as far as with the money and all that type of stuff, I can't control none of that. You know what I'm saying? I kind of put my hat on, and you know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's a long off season in front of me. As far as with the future, I don't have any surprises for you right now. But for me, I'm gonna still be me regardless.
Appreciate you, Steph.
Wait, what does he say at the end there?
In front of me, as far as with the future, I don't have any surprises for you right now. But for me, I'm gonna still be me regardless.
Appreciate you, Steph.
What does he say? I don't got what regardless? What was that?
That type of stuff. I can't control none of that. You know what I'm saying? I kind of put my hat on, and you know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's a long off season in front of me. As far as with the future, I don't have any surprises for you right now. But for me, I'm gonna still be me regardless.
Appreciate you, Steph.
I don't got what regard. I don't know. I can't make that out. I don't know. So all right. So let's just talk about this part. This is the part. Oh, is that what he said, Tommy? I'll still be me regardless. Is that what he says? Okay. Thank you. I don't know. It gets a little light on the mic, so I can't hear it that well. All right. Let's talk about this part. This is the part everybody's running with. I understand both sides of it. Both. And I get it. It is a business. We talk about it all the time. It's tough for us to separate the fandom from the business, because when you're as loyal as you are to a team like we are to the Bills, it is very hard to separate your loyalness to the team from the business end of things, because the business end of things does not contribute to loyalty. In fact, the business end of things is what oftentimes is the reason the loyalty is broken. These guys, this is their livelihood. They have a very short window to maximize on generational wealth. And I will never be the guy to sit here and tell you that these guys shouldn't go and make the most money they can while they can, no matter where it is or how they got to do it. Because these guys are the 0.0001% of the population that are in these situations. And as we've seen before, you can be one turn of an ankle away from losing out on a generation or two's worth of money. We're talking about one turn of the ankle can take away two grandchildren's or two sets of grandkids away from never having to working a day in your life. It's absurd. I'll never, ever denounce a player for immediately going to the business side of things first when it comes to simply talking about the contractual situations at hand. We had this same exact talk, whatever it was, 2 years ago. Maybe it was last year. I can't keep track of these off seasons half the time. They all jumble together. But don't you remember the speculation circulating around Jordan Poyer and his future with the Bills before he re-signed? Don't you remember him talking about maybe wanting to move to a place with less income tax, less state tax? I believe he went on a podcast, was it? I can't remember the situation, the specifics exactly as to how this became a topic, but I believe either his wife, Rachel Bush, said it on Twitter or Poyer went on a podcast. Either way, there was a conversation around Poyer wanting to play in an area that did not have income tax, such as Dallas, right, or Miami or Vegas. There's a variety of situations. And everybody was like, oh, freaking out. Oh, I want to leave the Bills, this and that. And I remember I was one of the only people on Twitter who said, guys, put yourself in the shoes of these people. You can make $40 million playing in Buffalo, New York, okay? And the government's going to come knock on the door and say, hey, we appreciate your contributions to the Bills. Please hand us over $25 million of it. Or I can go make the same $40 million playing for the Raiders and not have to give back a dime of it. Sorry, if I'm in the situation of some of these guys, that would be a major influence on my decision. If I become a free agent and I'm getting offered the same money from the Jets or the Giants or the Bills, right? The Eagles, whatever. And I'm getting offered the same money in South Beach, or I'm getting the same, all these different states. If I'm getting offered the same money in New York and California, where the taxes are just downright laughable, and they're offering me the same money over in Vegas, and they're offering me the same money over in Florida and Texas, you'd be nuts to think that I wouldn't sit there and make that be a major contributing factor to what my decision would be. Now, the big contributor to me would be, what's the team looking like? I, for one, think that this is just my opinion. If I'm an athlete at the highest level of the sport, my legacy means a whole lot to me. When you're making tens of millions of dollars every year, you're kind of splitting hairs when you get to the point of, hey, I'll make an extra $5 million here, but I'm also going to be giving up the ability to be contending for the playoffs or the Super Bowl. If I personally had to forfeit $5-10 million of a $40-50 million contract to play with a Super Bowl team, that to me would be worth the money. So you have to weigh out what your priorities are. As an athlete, sitting in that situation, my legacy would mean a lot to me, and the success that I have to show for my career, that would mean a lot to me. Knowing I already got more money in the bank than I can spend in 10 lifetimes, I'm going to shave a little off the top to go and play with a contender, right? But what I'm saying is, if I got a contender out in Texas or Miami or Vegas, and I got the same offer from them as I have from a contender in New York or California, I'm more than likely going to the contender that doesn't have any income tax. Does that make sense? So I understand the business end of this stuff totally, because it is what it is. It's these guys' jobs. Imagine someone walking into your job and saying to you, hey, you can go work the same job that you're working right now, but we're gonna either pay you more, or we're going to relocate you to a job that does the same thing you're doing now, but you're going to make way more because we're not going to tax you or this or that. Think about it. Let's go back to the accounting situation. Say you're an accountant. Someone walks into your accountant firm and says, hey, we're going to offer you the ability to go be an accountant in Florida, and we're going to pay you either the same amount of money or more money, but no income tax. Or, hey, your firm is willing to, you're a free agent now. Your firm's willing to offer you this, but we're getting offers from a variety of other accounting firms across the country that are willing to pay you 20, 30% more. I'd love to know the people who sit around and speculate all day about these guys' financial decisions. I'd love to know the people who, if they were in the same shoes, would say, it's only money. I'm not going to take it. I'm only working every day for the rest of my life. Might as well not make more money. It's absurd to see all the people who sit around and criticize the athletes' opinions on their own financial situations, when if they were put in the same exact situation, they would take the money every single time. It reminds me of the Live Golf situation when everybody was bitching and moaning and criticizing guys like Phil Mickelson, who are offered $700 million to go swing a golf club. And people are like, oh, they're selling their soul. They're selling out. Okay, pal. Okay, guy working in the accounting firm. I'd love to see the guy walk up to you with a $700 million check and you look him in the eye and say, oh, no, thanks. I'm above that. Yeah. Let me find that guy. I'd love to meet him. Then again, however, that guy's all over Twitter ripping Phil Mickelson and whoever the hell else was involved in that situation a new asshole. By the way, there were people who were loyal to the PGA, and there were people who were willing to not take that money in order to uphold their own integrity. And what happened? The PGA said right here, a double bird. We're going to go take the money. PGA was like, oh, we're going to shame you into thinking you're a complete asshole for taking this money. Oh, but a year later, by the way, we're going to completely change our entire mindset on how we feel about the logistics of this, how we feel about the morality of this. We're going to take all the money. So those who didn't take the $500 million, $700 million check a year ago, sorry. Hey, tough luck. You should have done it, even though we and all the internet sleuths made you feel like a complete piece of shit for considering it. It's incredible. So all these people sit around all day long and that's all they talk about, right? So when he's talking about the business end of things right here, Stefon Diggs, I totally get it. It is a business. He doesn't know what the Bills are going to do. And we all know that these teams, they're going to do what's best for them way before they're going to do what's best for the player. That PGA Tour Live Golf situation is the perfect example. The PGA Tour shamed a ton of guys for thinking that, they were going against America and they were going against the PGA for going and taking Live Golf money, just for a year later, the PGA to go and take the exact same money they were shaming these guys over in the first place. That's the perfect example of the company. The overarching entity is always going to do what's best for them over what's best for those working for them. So my opinion has always been those working for those corporations should always do what's best for them as well, or at least always do what's best for what they feel to believe are their top priorities. So like Tom Brady, for instance, forever, his top priority was to be a mother effing champion. So he never took the most money in the league. Could he have? Certainly, but it wasn't his priority. But he still did what was best for him. He still felt like he was doing what was best for him. Some of these guys What Leonard Floyd just talked about it. We'll talk about that later on, maybe this week, tomorrow on the smoke break. But Leonard Floyd's another example. He was asked about his situation in Buffalo, and he said it straight. He said he'd love to stay there, but he said it straight as anybody could say it. He goes, I'm going to go where the money's going to go. Who the hell could blame the guy? But sure enough, there will be people out there saying, Leonard Floyd, just chasing the bag. Yeah, he's chasing the bag. The guy's clock is ticking. He's going to be out of the league not all that long from now. Go make the money. Who could deny him that thought process? So I get it when Stefon Diggs is saying, I don't know what's going to happen here. These guys could deal me tomorrow for all I know. I get that. But what I think people have a problem with, and this is where you this is kind of how you got to view it. It's up to you how you decide. I have always felt when you're placed in this situation, the best way to handle it is to just say, look, it's pretty much like what Leonard Floyd did. He said, I'd love to stay here, but I'm going to go where the money is. Stefon Diggs is saying, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say, I'd love to be here, even though we've heard him in the past say it. This is what I think the struggle with people with Stefon Diggs is there's a lot of different, almost contradictory things to balance, and that's why there's so many people on one side or the other of how they feel about him and his relationship with the Bills and Josh Allen. There's like so many things on one side and so many things on the other, and he never really sets it down the middle. What he said is accurate, right? He doesn't know what's going to happen. It's a business at the end of the day, and it's not necessarily up to him as to what happens, but he doesn't say, I'd love to be a Buffalo Bill. I'd love to stay here. I'd love to retire here. I don't know. So once again, it's all up for interpretation. And here's how I look at this entire thing. Before I say that, let's go back and rewatch this latter half here and just once again take it all in and really clarify what we're watching here.
Guys, cap situation. Where do you think you'll be? Do you think you'll be a Bill next season?
I don't know. I feel like as far as with the money and all that type of stuff, I can't control none of that. You know what I'm saying? I kind of put my hat on and, you know what I'm saying? Like I said, it's a long off season in front of me. As far as with the future, I don't have any surprises for you right now, but for me, I'm gonna still be me regardless.
Appreciate you, Steph. Appreciate you.
I don't know. To me, there isn't a whole lot from that portion to get riled up about. If anything, I thought there was more to kind of dissect about the Josh Allen relationship thing just because of the lack of what was said in regard to the question. That, to me, felt like the portion of this interview that could be discussed a bit more. This part of it, though, I don't think what he said is anything different than what we've heard from a lot of guys. The one thing I think you'd like to hear him say that he didn't, and maybe that's why people have more of an issue with it than others, is he doesn't say, hey, I'd love to be a Buffalo Bill. I'd love to stay here. I love what we got going on here. But at the end of the day, I don't control this. I don't know what's going to happen. I have no surprises for you as of now. This and that. What I will say is in this 2.5, 3 minute interview here, I think all you get is what you've gotten thus far from this situation. You just get a whole lot of speculation. I don't think he directly answers anything here. I don't think he takes a stand on one side or the other when it comes to whether he's going to be a Bill, whether he's got a great relationship with Josh Allen, this, that, whatever. I don't think that there's any stand my ground, this is how I feel on the situation type answers here. So with that, let's just look at what we have here for face value, what we know is facts. And that's he's under contract. It would be a massively difficult situation to move off of him. You'd have to find the proper suitor. And I think when it comes to the cap situation, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the Bills to maneuver with Stefon Diggs. But then again, we've seen crazier. What most would tell you right now, including me, you'll look at the logistics of the situation, and it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for the Buffalo Bills to move off of Stefon Diggs. Not just because of the finances, by the way. Then all of a sudden, Khalil Shakir becomes your wide receiver one. These guys don't have a wide receiver one. Most teams have enough wide receiver talent where you sit around and argue who the wide receiver one is. Dolphins, Waddle, Hill. The Eagles, my God, they're loaded over there. A lot of these top teams, that's why what the Chiefs, in my opinion, are doing are, once again, just that much more impressive. Your best receiver's a rookie that no one even knew who the hell he was before, 2-3 months ago. But most of these great offenses have a ton of talent. Obviously, the Bengals are another one. Tyler Boyd and Jamar Chase. Or T. Higgins. I said Tyler Boyd. And Tyler Boyd's still there, but T. Higgins. T. Higgins is the one with Jamar Chase everybody talks about. The Bills don't have anything. They got Khalil Shakir. I love what I've seen out of Khalil Shakir. You want him as your top receiver? That's why we will talk about it all offseason, especially right before the draft and this portion coming up. These Bills have got to put a massive emphasis on the wide receiver position, whether that includes Diggs or not. You got a gun to my head. You're asking me what's going to happen here. Stefon Diggs is going to be a Buffalo Bill this coming season. I don't see a situation where he's not. But the Bills have got to find the predecessor. Or the successor, is it? Yeah, they have got to find, they have to make a succession plan here for Stefon Diggs. Because this might be the last year. They have got to have an adequate succession plan in place for Stefon Diggs once he's no longer a Bill. Because if all of a sudden he wasn't a Bill this coming year, trouble offensively. They have got to start using these draft tickets, these draft tokens, these lottery tickets. They got to start throwing them at the wide receiver position, hoping that they hit. Because we've seen a lot of these teams with young quarterbacks or star quarterbacks, they throw their assets at the offense. Because that's where their biggest investment is. Why would I not make additional investments to maximize on my biggest investment? Right? So that's the biggest emphasis. But this whole situation in particular, I wanted to just talk about it tonight for like an hour or so, just because it's getting talked about so much. In reality, we just watched all that. Look, we sat here and broke it down. I gave you my opinions, but let's face it. Let's face it. It's a 2.5-minute clip. Is there really anything in there that you sit back and say, he's gone? I don't think so. And when you look at the contract, you have way more reason to believe he's not going to be gone. So I don't watch that and sit back and say, see you later. I don't think I take away anything from that I didn't already know. He didn't really say anything. That was a whole lot of answering questions with a whole lot of words and not a whole lot of answers. What's up with the contract? What's up with the future in Buffalo? I don't know. I'm not the one running the books. I'm not the one running payroll. Ask them. Fair enough. He doesn't know. And then with the Allen situation, it's just like, it seems like he's gotten to the point where he's like, I just don't even care about this anymore. You guys can do whatever you want. The reason I wouldn't have answered it like that is because I think it opens up more speculation, but it just seems like he doesn't really give a shit. So if he's tired of it like he claims he is, I would have just said, dude, I love Allen, this and that. It would have taken 30 seconds to say it. And then that would have been that. But Dave's like, so why are you talking about? Well, because everybody else is talking about it. I figure I'd give some comments on it. You know what I mean? Welcome to the off season. Right? The reason I'm talking on it is because I look at everybody freaking out about it, and I wanted to just come on and say, hey, let's watch it. Let's break it down. And then let's really figure out, at the end of the day, why is it what it is? That's how I usually look at these things. Right? I look at these things, and my question is always like, why is everybody online freaking out about it? That's why I'm talking about it. That's what always interests me the most about these things. People are watching that, and their immediate response is like, oh my God, I'm freaking out. We're freaking out. What the hell? He's gone. I hate him. This and that. And we just went through it. You watch it, and you're just kind of like, what do you really take away from it? I don't know. Not a whole hell of a lot. But this is what the wide receiver position is in the NFL. All these guys do this. It's a glamour position. That's why the majority of wide receivers, including Stefon Diggs, they show up to the game and they got their fashion show gear on. All these guys do. It's a different type of position. All these guys are like this. So, whatever. for one, I don't take a whole lot away from that other than we don't really know any more than we already did. The one thing I do take away from it, though, is this. Get ready for a whole lot of people just talking about him getting ready to leave. That's all this is going to be in the offseason. And they're just going to use that mixed with a variety of other stupid shit from the past, right? They're just going to use all this all offseason here and be like, yeah, Diggs is on the ropes. Diggs is on the ropes. That's all it's going to be. So just get ready for that. But always use your best judgment when watching these things and just look at it and say, is this really worth everyone online going nuts and getting the pitchforks out? And if the answer is no, Teddy's coming in here saying, and this is mostly how I feel about it. This is the only thing about it from his perspective that I find to be open for criticism is this. It's the most annoying. Teddy says the most annoying thing he could clarify, but chooses not to. I agree. I think it's just easier instead of doing a word salad dance around. Hey, you guys can talk about whatever you want. You can feel however you want. I just think it's easier to just say, Josh is my guy. We're out there every week doing our thing, doing our best. 50-yard touchdown season. He's balling. I'm happy to be catching the ball with him. You know, it didn't work out the way it did this year, but we're hoping to get another crack next year and put our best foot forward. I think it's way easier to say that than, hey, you know, you guys can talk about whatever you want. You can talk about this and that, because in my opinion, it's really tough to say you're sick of it while also not putting it to bed. I can understand being sick and tired of everybody talking about it if you put your stake in the ground on the situation. But it's tough to say you're sick of it when you kind of open up more opportunity for people to have an opinion on a situation that you really could kill the opinion on, right? But at the end of the day, I think it's just a whole lot of BS. The funny thing about this is that is with the NFL, we pretend like it isn't, but it totally is. It's a gigantic soap opera. It's a soap opera for guys with beards, right? That's what the NFL is. It's not your traditional guiding light or Days of Our Lives, but my God, if you don't think the NFL is a massive soap opera, you're lying to yourself. And welcome to the biggest soap opera special of the year, the offseason. The offseason, it's all it is. It's a gigantic soap opera where we sit around like a bunch of chatty Cathys and talk about a bunch of gossip bullshit. At the end of the day, that's all it is. That's all it is. So I like to come on here and look into it, and I like to come on here and say, well, why is it like this? And 9 out of 10 times I'll do this, and I'll look at it, and I'll be like, I don't know. Kind of seems pretty stupid to me. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And that's what Kevin's saying. It's so true. It's like, what else are you going to talk about? That's why we do it. There isn't anything else to talk about. Like, we know it. We know there, like, it's, I think a lot of us know it's stupid, but like you said, what else are you going to talk about? I tell you, like, I'm not going to watch baseball. You know, I'm not going to watch baseball. So I'd much rather talk about, hey, is, like that, like we do it all the time. Like Andy Reid, Mike Vrabel, and Bill Belichick still don't have a job. And I talked about it last week because it's something to talk about. You're like, Andy Reid's on his way to the Super Bowl. Is he going to retire afterwards? Like, this is what we do. Like, this is what we do. It's like Andy Reid in the midst of one of the greatest dynasties of all time. Is he going to retire afterwards? Coming up after the break. Like, that's what we do. But hey, I think that's part of why we love it. We pretend like we don't, but we totally do. I'll be honest. I love it when it's got nothing to do with the Bills. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, you know, Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill filed for divorce from his wife. And it got reported online because it's public record. When you file for a divorce, it's public record with it at the town. And Mike Florio, like him and a variety of other people, like tweeted it out that he was filing for a divorce or whatever. It's public knowledge. And Tyreek Hill came out and said, like, he didn't do it. Of course he did. No one else can go and file a divorce on your behalf. So then it came around to him essentially saying that some assistant of his did it or whatever. So it's stuff like this where you're watching from the sideline and it's just like a soap opera where you can't help but laugh. You're like, Tyreek Hill clearly filed for a divorce. It was public knowledge. Everybody was talking about it. And he comes out and goes, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. So I just like watching from afar the stuff that hasn't have anything to do with the Bills. And I'm all for a little bit of drama. I'm all for a little bit of something to talk about. Don't get me wrong. For God's sakes, I got a Bills talk show where I come on here and talk to you. Sometimes we're on here for 4 or 5 hours. So nobody loves something to talk about more than me. But give me something worth talking about, right? Give me something worth talking about. Give me something worth having a passionate opinion about, one way or the other. A lot of this stuff feels like there just isn't any reason to be passionate about it. But like, who was it? Kevin earlier in the chat here. What else are you going to talk about? Exactly. So, folks, I guess this is a nice taste of what the offseason will be, just like every other offseason would be. You know what I mean? That's what it's going to be. All right, so let's give a preview of what's up for this week. So tomorrow night, Monday night, your regular scheduled smoke break will be at 7 p.m. Eastern, right where you are at here on the Buffalo Fanatics YouTube channel. And tomorrow night will be the Super Bowl preview. So we're going to dive into the preview of the Super Bowl. Look, I get as sick as anyone having to talk about two teams that aren't the Bills, but it's still the Super Bowl. We're all going to be watching. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl, all the theatrics at hand, all the different things on both sides. And then we're going to come up with a winner, and we're going to talk about why I think the winner is going to be the winner and whatever, this, that, and other thing. Super Bowl preview tomorrow. Later on in the week, we're going to do an additional Super Bowl preview, but it's not going to be about the game itself. We're going to do a betting preview. So we're going to go through later in the week. We're going to do a Super Bowl betting preview. I'm going to go through all of the bets I'm going to be ripping on the Super Bowl, go through each one, talk about the reasons why and all these different things. So we'll do that later in the week as well. So that's what's on the slate for this coming week. But tomorrow, smoke break, 7 o'clock, be here. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl and try to find a way to come up with a rooting interest in this game. I know it's difficult, but hey, it's a game without the Bills in it. It's the biggest game of the year, and we got to find a reason to watch it, don't we? Speaking of the Super Bowl, folks, this show, as you know, powered and sponsored by BetUS with a 125% bonus in the link in the description below. You can get that when you deposit through that link over on BetUS, and you can bet on the Super Bowl. With BetUS, you can bet on everything from the game to even the coin toss. You can bet on whether the opening coin toss is heads or tails. Personally, it's one of my favorite annual bets. We'll even go into breaking that down later in the week. We'll talk about all the different bets that you can bet on, but you can get early in on it with BetUS right now when you go and click the link in the description below. Get that 125% sign-up bonus. But as we know, Super Bowl 58 is next weekend, and if you want some inside info right now, before you and I even get into the betting preview later in the week, if you want some inside info and picks advice from award-winning sports bettors before the big game, go over to BetUS Picks and Predictions YouTube channel and hit the link in the description below. That will bring you right there. So I'm going to put the link in the description below. It's going to take you to BetUS's Picks and Predictions YouTube channel. And if you're looking into betting on the Super Bowl, that channel's got you covered. They got everything over there to get you ready for the ins and outs of all the different bets that you can make on the Super Bowl. So make sure to go check out that channel. I'll have the link for that in the description below. And then make sure to check out my personal betting preview later on in the week. But before all that, tomorrow night, same place you're at right now, 7 o'clock, smoke break, we will have our Super Bowl preview. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm looking forward to having you in for it. But thank you so much for tuning into a quick one tonight, and we will be back at it again tomorrow night. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening, folks. Enjoy your Monday, and I'll see you tomorrow night to round it out. Until then, folks, much love as always,
It's good for you. Come on.
and go Bells.
We'll think of another place. Come with me. Let's have a smoke break. Nah, not just a normal break. It's smoke break. Smoke break.